Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere dark, literally. We're descending into the damp, narrow tunnels of a 14th century German silver mine. A place where the sun barely touches the ground, where walls sweat, and the air grows thinner with every step down. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't noble. And if we're being honest, you wouldn't last a day. But don't worry, we're not actually going to make you swing a pickaxe. We're just going to slip quietly into that world and see what it was really like to live in the shadow of mountains beneath the weight of stone. Before we begin, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you're enjoying this sleepy dive into the strange and uncomfortable corners of the past. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. So now, could dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease down into the earth together. Close your eyes. You're in the Erzgebirge, the Ore Mountains. The air is cold, and everything smells faintly of smoke and wet wool. You wake before dawn, when the stars are still clinging to the sky like frost. The cold has crept into your bones overnight. It's never warm here, not really. Not in the highlands of Saxony. There's a thin layer of ice in the basin beside your bed. You break it with your knuckles and splash the water over your face. No soap, no towel. Just water, just breath. You're already behind, your boots go on damp. You slept in your working clothes, thick wool that smells of smoke and animal fat. You can't afford to be clean. Not when you'll be crawling through mud in less than an hour. There's no breakfast. A crust of rye maybe if you remembered to save some. You chew it dry. It scratches the roof of your mouth. Then comes the walk. Down the ridge, past the frozen creek. The sun is just starting to bleed into the horizon, gray and pale. But you're already at the mine shaft. Already gripping the thick hemp rope with both hands. You descend, the shaft is vertical, deep cold. Your calloused palms slide on the rope. Sometimes you use your feet to brace the slippery walls. Sometimes not. Below you, it's dark. Below you, men are already shouting. The sound echoes strangely. You drop for what feels like forever. Finally, your boots touch bottom, clay slick and soft. You're 20, maybe 30 meters below the surface. Here, the light is dim. There's a single oil lamp flickering by the tool rack, casting long shadows like teeth across the rock. You take a pickaxe, iron-headed, heavy, worn smooth at the handle. You won't be drilling today. No one trusts you with the iron wedge. Today you're hauling. The air is damp and smells like a cellar after rain. You make your way into one of the horizontal tunnels. Adits, they call them. Low corridors chiseled out by men who've long since disappeared. The walls are narrow. The ceiling presses just above your head. Sometimes you must crouch, sometimes crawl. There is no fresh air. Only smoke from the torches. Only dust that coats your throat like flour. Your job is simple, carry the rocks out. Over and over again. Another miner shouts from deeper inside he's found something. A glitter of galena, lead ore, or maybe silver-bearing rock. He grunts and begins to chip at the seam with rhythmic, deliberate strikes. Each blow rings through the stone like a church bell. You wait beside the wooden wheelbarrow. You listen, you try not to cough. Soon the chunks come, dull gray stone, heavy as sin. You lift them into the barrow one by one. Then comes the return trip. Back up the slope, back through the tunnel. You duck beneath a low beam where someone scratched their initials in soot. Outside it's snowing, but you won't see that for hours. Maybe not at all today. You dump the rocks into the sorting pile. The Steiger, the mine supervisor, stands nearby, arms crossed. He grunts when you nod. That's as much praise as you'll ever get. And then you go back in. You'll do this 12, 14, even 16 hours if the bell doesn't ring. You eat a raw onion at midday. Maybe a boiled carrot if your wife traded right. You relieve yourself in the corner of a tunnel that smells like every corner of every tunnel. You ignore the bruises on your ribs, the cut on your shin, the way your fingers ache when you try to flex them. There is no day or night here. Only start and stop, only silence or shouting. Only the sound of rock meeting iron over and over again, until your hands forget they ever touched anything softer than stone. At the end of the shift, you climb back up, rope burned, wheezing. You emerge into the white dusk, blinking like a mole. You do not talk much on the way home. You don't have the breath for it. You eat whatever hasn't frozen. You collapse onto your straw mat. Your skin is gray with dust. Your boots are still damp. You sleep. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. Unless your lungs give out, or the ceiling does. Let the sound of pickaxes fade now. Let the dark quiet of the tunnels deepen. The mountain is still. The carts have stopped rolling. You are no longer in the mines. You're walking through a cold stone corridor. Torches flicker in iron sconces. Their light dances across tapestries that smell of age and damp wool. Your boots make no sound on the rushes scattered across the floor. Crushed herbs beneath them release a faint, bitter scent. In the distance, a man is coughing. His voice is soft, wet, persistent. He is dying, but not yet. Not quite. His name is Günther von Schwarzberg, a name mostly forgotten, except here in these lands of forest and ore where his family once ruled and feuded and feasted. He wasn't supposed to be king, but for a few brief, flickering months, he nearly was. He began as a soldier, not the kind who dies anonymously on a field, the kind who listens more than he speaks, who waits his turn, the kind who wears his armor like a second skin, not a symbol. The empire was crumbling, not fast, not loud, but like dry wood hollowed from within. The Holy Roman Empire, 1,000 lords, 1,000 claims, and Günther, second son of a minor count, waited. He fought in Italy, held his own at Meissen. He dined beside emperors, quietly, spoke in measured tones, never loudly. That was how he moved through the world, not like a boulder tumbling downhill, but like a shadow cast across the stones. It was the year 1349. The old emperor was dead, and the electors, those few powerful men who chose the next, were divided. Charles of Luxembourg had claims, gold armies, but he was a pope's man, too French, too soft, too beholden to Rome. So 4 of the electors turned to Günther. He had no great army, no vast estates, but he had friends, influence, a reputation for calm in an empire full of storm. They offered him the throne. He accepted cautiously, quietly. Perhaps he thought the title would come with weight. Perhaps he thought the empire needed someone who didn't shout. For a few weeks, he was crowned. In Frankfurt, beneath vaulted ceilings that smelled of old incense and horse sweat. The people cheered, or at least they didn't riot. They called him King of the Romans. But titles don't matter if no one kneels. Charles moved quickly. He sent letters, promises, gold, and then troops. Cities turned. Bishops wavered. Nobles who had sworn oaths to Günther quietly, carefully, changed sides. There were no grand battles, only doors that closed, roads that rerouted, messengers that vanished in forests. And then the plague arrived, the Black Death. It rolled through Thuringia like smoke. It took peasants, knights, monks, barmaids, children, and it took Günther. He had fled to Frankfurt, weakened and betrayed. There, coughing blood, he lay in a narrow bed beside leaded glass windows, watching clouds drift by like sails on an unseen sea. He died quietly. There were no wars fought in his name, no songs, save perhaps one written in Latin and forgotten by most. He was buried with modest ceremony. His tomb lies in the Church of St. Bartholomew, among bones older than kingdoms. But for a moment, a single strange moment, the son of miners and mountain lords sat in a hall where emperors once feasted. And if you stand there now in the quiet nave where sunlight slices through dust-heavy air, you might still feel it. Not power, but presence. There is a forest in Saxony. It is quiet, thick. Green in summer, silver in winter. The trees grow tall but not straight, their roots disturbed by something deep below. You wouldn't notice it at first, not unless you were trained to look. A shallow depression here, a ring of stones half buried there. A curious ridge where the soil is darker, softer, looser. These are not natural. These are mouths and old mine shafts now collapsed or covered. Wounds left by centuries of digging. You are walking over a ghost city. A Bergstadt, a medieval mining town gone now. Swallowed by time and tree. But under the moss, history still hums. Archaeologists began their work here quietly in the 1990s. At first just old records. Grainy maps, church ledgers. But then came the ground-penetrating radar. The hill opened like a book, pages of stone and wood inked in rust. They found a system, complex, ordered. A spider web of tunnels, air shafts, drainage galleries. Not the chaos you might imagine, but something deliberate mind planning. From 1350, before the printing press, before Columbus, before gunpowder ruled the field. The tunnels were lined with fir logs, blackened now. Charcoal dated to 1372. The support beams were driven in by hand, shaped with adzes, the same marks found on ship hulls from the same era. They found tools too, simple iron picks, a narrow-handled shovel almost childlike in its size, and further in, a leather boot preserved in anaerobic mud, still laced, still soft, its sole worn unevenly. You can almost picture the foot that wore it. A one shaft yielded something stranger, a low chamber, its roof just a meter high. Inside, a small shrine, a wooden cross half rotted. Beside it, a wax figure melted and hardened again like amber. Perhaps a saint, perhaps not. No records mention it, no one alive remembers. But someone, 600 years ago, knelt there in the dark before swinging their axe again into the living wall of stone. Iskar in nearby spoil heaps, the waste rock discarded by miners. They found broken ceramic bowls, crushed drinking flasks, and fragments of bone. Some from pigs, some from people. No explanation, no inscriptions. Just a femur scraped flat along one side. They don't dwell on it. Instead, they trace water channels, clever grooves cut into slopes used to power mechanical hammers. Water and wood, the pulse of the mountain. In spring, snowmelt would flood the upper valleys. And in those few weeks, machines would whir to life. Stamping mills crushing ore under rhythmic wooden arms that thudded like heartbeats. Even now, if you close your eyes beside the stream bed, you might hear them again. A phantom rhythm, timber on stone. Work without end. Deeper still, in a shaft marked Eisengrube 12, they found something sealed. A cave-in, natural perhaps, or deliberate. It took months to clear. When they did, they found a wooden sled. Still intact, still upright. As if the miner had left it there just yesterday. But there was no body, just dust, and the heavy silence of a place no one had walked in 6 centuries. And there is mystery in absence. The things not found, the names not recorded, the faces never carved in stone. We know how they worked. We know how they died. But what did they dream of down there? A warm hearth, a loaf of bread, a better shift? A way out, we don't know. But we keep digging. Gently, carefully. With brushes, not axes. With questions, not commands. Because the mountain remembers even when we forget. Let the dust settle now. Let the torchlight dim behind you. You've never been inside the Burgmeister's house, but you've seen it. From the shaft's mouth, your eyes drift toward the hillside. There it stands. Pale timber and clean stone. Removed from the soot and smoke. Elevated just enough to look down over everything. It's not a castle, no. But it might as well be. And the house belongs to the man who holds the papers. Not the pickaxe. He doesn't dig. He doesn't carry. He doesn't cough up dust each night. He signs the shipments. He weighs the silver. He collects the coin and divides it, most to himself, the rest in careful crumbs to others. They call him Burgmeister. Some say it with reverence, others with a bitterness that lingers behind clenched teeth. And the entrance hall is warm even in winter. Logs are stacked by the hearth in neat rows. Real glass in the windows. Rare, wavy, warped but true glass. Keeps out the draft that seeps through every commoner's home. The floors are covered in rugs from cities you've only heard of. Lubeck, Bruges, Prague. They're not even walked on most of the time. On the walls hang maps, not of the countryside, of the mine. Intricate sketches of tunnels and shafts and new veins traced with charcoal lines. A whole kingdom beneath the earth ruled from above. And the Burgmeister doesn't eat from a bowl. He dines from pewter plates, his meat cut by a boy who stands behind him with a knife too fine for field work. His bread is white, his salt is from far-off shores. And his wine is carried in from another valley, not because it's better, but because it is not local. He does not want the taste of labor. He drinks to forget the mine exists. But his wife remembers. She manages the household with quiet precision. The linen count, the herbs in the drying racks, the servants who come and go. She dresses plainly but with detail. A silver clasp at the throat, a ring with a garnet the size of a pea, a belt hung with tiny bells that chime when she walks through stone corridors. She does not touch soil. She does not bleed her own chickens. But she knows when the larder is low, and when a servant girl is with child, and when a guest is lying. Her eyes miss nothing. Their children play in the garden with wooden swords and Latin books. They do not run wild. They do not cough from the dust. They are taught to speak slowly, clearly, to sit up straight, to never forget that the mine, the mountain, belongs to their father, though he has never held a hammer. They will inherit not land, but extraction. At dusk, the Burgmeister steps onto his small stone balcony. Below, a few torches glow near the shaft, flickering in the fog. He can see the silhouettes of men returning home, backs bent, clothes stiff with grime. He watches them for a moment, and then he turns away. Inside, a servant stirs the fire. In the walls, the heat is even. In the dining hall, the plates are cleared. In the hallway, the maps of tunnels remain unaltered, but for one new ink mark drawn in silence. A vein discovered this morning, rich with promise, deep enough that it will take months to reach. The Bergmeister smiles faintly and returns to his study. He never hears the whistle of the wind through the mine shaft. He never smells the burning pitch. He never tastes the dust. That is for other mouths. You don't eat well, that's just the way of things. The silver goes to taxes, to tolls, to trade. The meat goes to the Bergmeister's table. The best wheat to the merchants. What's left for you is enough to survive. But barely. It begins before the sun. You wake to a cold room. Low-ceilinged, thick-walled, stone-flagged. The fire in the hearth is no longer burning. But the ashes are still warm. Someone stirred them once in the night. Maybe your wife, maybe you. You don't remember. On the table, a single bowl, thick, wooden, slightly scorched on the bottom. Inside, a porridge made from millet or sometimes barley, boiled the night before. Now it's stiffened. A layer of skin forms across the top. You stir it with 2 fingers, feel the grains loosen. The texture become edible. There's no milk. The goat stopped producing weeks ago. There's salt barely. You pinch it sparingly. Salt costs coin. Coin means silver. Silver comes from underground and you're already late. You eat standing slowly, not because you savor it, but because your muscles haven't yet remembered how to work. If it's a feast day, and there are more than you remember thanks to saints' fasts and old traditions, there may be bread. Black, heavy rye bread. You break it with your teeth, not your hands. It's crusted with ash from the community oven, but it fills you, anchors your gut. Sometimes you chew a bitter herb, dock or mustard green, not for flavor, but to clear your throat, to wake your senses. You do not speak during the meal. Your children, if you have them, do not ask for seconds. They've learned what no sounds like even when unspoken. Lunch, if there is time for it, comes during the break near midday. Not a rest, really. More like a moment stolen from the grind. You eat sitting on a rock, hands filthy, breath still ragged. From a cloth bag tucked into your tunic, you remove your meal. It is the same every day. A small cloth parcel of cold turnip mash, salted. A crust of yesterday's bread, now hardened. And, if you are lucky, a sliver of cured pork fat, white and slick, wrapped in paper and quickly swallowed before it can soften too much in the hand. You chew quickly. Sometimes you joke with the others. Sometimes not. Sometimes you sit in silence, chewing with your mouth open just for the warmth of it. While dinner, the only real meal, is shared. You return home sore. You've brought back nothing but yourself. Your wife has been boiling a pot for hours. The stew changes with the seasons. In spring, bitter greens, old onions, maybe dried peas. In summer, cabbage, sometimes a stolen carrot. In winter, mostly water and herbs. She serves it with a dipper into bowls that don't match. You eat slowly. The broth is thin, but it warms you. You soak the bread in it to stretch the flavor. There is no dessert, there is no candle. There is only the sound of spoons and slurping, and then the soft scrape of a bowl being licked clean. Once a month, perhaps, a festival brings a feast. A real one. The miners' families gather in the square. An ox is slaughtered, bread is stacked high, ale is poured in wooden mugs. Herbs sweeten the air. Rosemary, thyme, even a scrap of cinnamon if someone is wealthy or showing off. You eat until your stomach aches. You drink until your cheeks flush. You laugh, loud and sudden, forgetting for a moment what waits below. It is a gift, a trick of the calendar, a reminder that you are still alive. But tonight, after the laughter has died down, after the bones have been tossed into the fire, after the last cup of watered-down wine has been drained, you return home. And tomorrow it will begin again. Miletsalt, silence, and another descent into the mountain. The road into town is made of broken rock, not laid deliberately, not cobbled, but simply crushed underfoot by centuries of passing carts and iron-rimmed wheels. Everything here presses downward. The town sits not on the mine, but around it, folded tightly into the hills like a clenched fist around a shard of silver. You don't think of it as beautiful. You think of it as necessary. The buildings are crowded, low, often leaning slightly. They press against each other like tired shoulders, each house borrowing warmth from its neighbor. Walls are made from whatever could be hauled or bought. Timber from thinning forests, stone hauled from the spoil heaps, thatch from grasses too coarse for livestock. The roofs drip steadily in the morning. The mist clings to the wooden beams long after the sun rises. You walk the same streets every day. They're narrow, always a little damp. The runoff from the washing trough snakes between the stones, carrying the smell of lye and soap and something faintly metallic. There is always a queue somewhere. For bread, for salt, for news. You don't always join it. Sometimes you just watch. People speak in low voices. They are careful here. At the center of town sits the weighing hall, a thick-walled building with shuttered windows and a door that groans each time it opens. This is where the silver comes. Not in cartloads, but in little satchels, each one sealed and stamped with a miner's mark. The clerk weighs each bag twice, sometimes 3 times. Then he makes a note. You never see the note again. There are whispers about weights being changed, marks being copied, silver disappearing, but you don't question it. No one who questions ever seems to get called for extra shifts. You pass the tavern each evening. Its door swung wide, voices spilling out like smoke. Some are laughing, others are shouting. Inside, the light is warm and the ale smells sharp and earthy. You step in only sometimes, when there's coin left over, when the silence at home feels heavier than the noise outside. The benches are worn smooth. The table edges dark with the oil of thousands of hands. A fiddler plays in the corner, not skillfully, but with heart. Old songs, mining songs. You know them by rhythm, not by name. Down the alley, there's a woman who sharpens blades. She doesn't speak. Her stone wheel turns steadily, water splashing at her ankles. She'll hone your pick, your knife, your kitchen shears, but never with a smile. No one smiles in that alley. 2 doors down is the midwife, a woman whose face everyone knows, but whose name is never spoken aloud. She's called only in need and never thanked. Her hands are always clean and always shaking. Children chase each other past the tannery, covering their noses and squealing with mock horror. But they never slow down. They grow up learning to move quickly past bad smells, past worse truths. The older boys carry baskets, wood, sacks of ore. They don't speak unless spoken to. You recognize yourself in them. And you wonder if they see you as a glimpse of their future, or if the church bell rings every 3rd day. You never know why. Sometimes it's a funeral, sometimes a birth, sometimes nothing at all. Just a reminder that someone is counting the days. You walk by the chapel when you can. You don't go inside, but you watch the candles flicker through the slit window, and you remember that even silence has its own architecture. The town doesn't sleep when you do. Some shifts run through the night. The hoist groans long after sunset. The baker starts his fire before the stars fade. There's a heartbeat in the street, slow, steady, impossible to ignore. The sound of boots on gravel, of carts creaking, of coughing, of prayer. You lie in bed and hear it all, and you realize the town isn't sitting on the mine. It is the mine, its people are veins. Its breath is smoke, its bones are soaked with silver, and like the mountain itself, it will not rest. There is no mirror in your house, glass is too costly. And anyway, you wouldn't recognize what you'd see now. You know your face by feel, by the cracks at the corners of your mouth when you smile, the scabs that never fully heal along your knuckles, the way your shoulders no longer pull back the way they used to. You used to be taller. That's what they all say. But it's true. The mine shortens you inch by inch. In the tunnels, you stoop. You bend your neck forward. You hunch your back to crawl through shafts no taller than your chest. Each day, your spine folds itself tighter. Your muscles twist into shapes that were never meant to hold. At first, you stretch in the evenings. Fingers laced behind your back, heels pressed flat back against the wall. You feel your vertebrae creak and realign. But now you've stopped bothering. This is your posture now. Bent, efficient, useful. Your hands no longer feel. They grasp, they carry, they scrape. But sensation is dull, like pressing through wool. You once burned your palm on a coal without realizing. It blistered that night quietly under your glove. Your fingernails are black-rimmed, not from dirt but from bruising. They grow strangely now, thick and ridged like bark. They split in the cold and they don't grow straight anymore. Your knees ache when you wake. Your ankles crack when you step onto cold stone. But pain is not something you speak of. It's just part of the rhythm now. The older miners have a shape. You recognize it. Shoulders rounded forward, hips wide, hands swollen. They walk with a slight list, a sideways lean from years of standing at the slope. Their voices are low, their breaths short. You can hear the gravel in their lungs when they laugh. A laugh that starts in the belly but dies halfway to the throat. One of them told you years ago that the stone stays inside you. You don't leave the mine, he said. You just carry it differently. Your skin is pale where the sun never touches it, a cold blue-white beneath your tunic. But your face is browned, freckled, toughened, you burn easily now. Even a day in the fields can leave you raw. The dust from the mine clings to you. Even after washing, it hides in your ears, under your nails, and the folds behind your knees. You smell like it even when you've done nothing all day. The miner's scent is like no other, a mix of sweat, old earth, iron, and smoke. The women say it never fully leaves the bedclothes. At night, your legs twitch. They cramp sometimes out of nowhere. You drink water with vinegar to stop it. Sometimes it helps. Other times, you just bite down on the edge of your blanket and wait. You've learned not to wake your wife. Sleep is too precious for both of you. One winter, you broke your wrist in the shaft. The bone set crooked. You can still feel the lump beneath the skin. When it rains, it aches deep and slow, like a memory you didn't mean to keep. But you adapted. You hold the pick differently now. You swing from the elbow, not the wrist. You learn to make do. Everyone does. You watch the younger boys, tall, lean, fast with their tools. You remember being like that. You wonder how long they'll stay that way. One night, when you're near sleep, your son crawls onto your mat, small and shivering. He asks if he can become a miner like you. You look at him, at his thin arms and clean nails. You think of your father's hands, of his stoop, of his cough. You say nothing, you just hold him, and listen to his breath rise and fall untroubled for now. You don't think of meals as events. You think of them as interruptions. They mark the ends of shifts, the pauses in labor, the spaces between aches. You eat because there is work to be done. You stop only long enough to swallow, to breathe, and then the rhythm begins again. Breakfast is the simplest. If there is bread, it is coarse and hard, made from rye, perhaps barley. Thick crust, dense crumb, a flavor both sour and faintly bitter. Sometimes it's been sitting in the pantry for days. But you soak it in broth or beer and it softens enough to chew. Butter is rare, eggs even rarer. If they come from your neighbor's hens traded for firewood or labor. More often, there is just the bread and a little salt. Salt if you're lucky, and if the barrel hasn't drawn moisture from the damp air again. The midday meal is taken quickly, outside the shaft, in the lee of a hill, or in a dark corner of the weighing hall. You share a cloth with a friend. Each of you unwraps what your wife or mother packed that morning. Some dried peas, a hunk of cheese, hard, sharp, beginning to sweat. Or a thick stew poured into a wooden flask, heavy with root vegetables, light on meat. The stew is always warm at best, but it clings to your ribs. There's comfort in the thickness, in the onions, soft and stringy, in the turnips, pale and yielding, in the way it sticks to the sides of the bowl, like memory. There is always beer. Not strong, thin, cloudy, barely fermented, but it is safer than water. It dulls the edge of fatigue, softens the mouth, helps the dust go down. You drink slowly, you don't talk much. When you do, it's about things that don't matter. How high the sun is, how long the hoist took today, who sharpened their pick too short. The big things remain unspoken. Sometimes someone brings a sausage. The scent alone is enough to cause silence. You can smell it before you see it. The tang of cured meat, the fat rendered down until it glistens through the casing. It's sliced thin, passed around like coin. No one takes more than their share. It's not about hunger. It's about the reminder that things could taste like this once or again. The evening meal depends on the day. If there's money, you might buy a cut of meat, a bit of liver, dark and rich, or offal boiled in herbs to cut the iron taste. If there isn't, you settle for grain, gruel stirred until thick. Millet, oats, sometimes buckwheat, always salted, sometimes flavored with cabbage or leek. The children complain, the old do not. Everyone eats in silence, save for the scraping of spoons on wood. And the hearth fire burns low now. The pot is rinsed, wiped with cloth, set aside. You sit for a while with your back to the stone wall, your hands warm from the bowl. Your wife hums quietly as she plats her hair. Your son wraps a blanket around his knees and begins to nod off. You listen to the logs shift in the coals. You feel your stomach settle. There is no hunger left, but neither is there fullness. Just enough, always just enough. You lie down with the taste of salt still on your tongue. And in the distance, beyond the curve of the hill, you hear the bell from the weighing hall ring once. A signal. The next shift is beginning. But for now, your belly is quiet, and so is the night. Before you even step into the shaft, you hear it. A faint creak, wood against stone. A slow adjustment. The tunnel breathes. Not with wind, but with pressure, settling, groaning in place. On the mine is alive, they say. But not like a beast. More like a cathedral turned sideways and buried in the earth. Held aloft not by faith, but by wood. The timbers are thick and split oak or fir, depending on what the local woods allow. Dragged in by oxen, soaked through with rain, then cured slowly over the fire to harden them. Some are dark with age, others pale and new, still smelling of sap. They stand like ribs in the passage, spaced just far enough to walk beneath, close enough to feel safe, but never quite safe. You pass under them without thought now, like doorways, like thresholds. But sometimes when the tunnel is quiet, you stop and look. You place a hand on one, feel the grain, the splintering, the faint vibration of strain. Some timbers are bound with iron rings. Others have wedges pounded into their base, bracing them tight. All of them sag eventually. The older men tell stories about talking wood, how the timbers speak before they break. A high groan, a sudden snap, a cough from the ground itself. They say if you hear 3 pops, run. But most of the time there's no warning. Just a shift, a sudden rain of dust, the tunnel's breath catching. Some shafts are better propped than others. The deeper veins, the ones that promise real copper, are often the most treacherous. There the stone crumbles easily, so the posts are packed tighter, wedged against ceiling and wall, shoulder to shoulder like silent sentries. You can taste the damp in those places, feel the weight above, not metaphorical. Literal cold and pressing. On one time when you were younger, you helped replace a collapsed beam. You remember the shape of it, splintered at both ends, still smelling of crushed moss. You remember the sound when it cracked, a crack that echoed like thunder through the shaft, followed by silence. Not peace, but pause. The others didn't speak, they just began again. Unrolling rope, positioning wedges. Bracing the earth, you trust the timbers. Not because they cannot fail, but because they do, and you know what that looks like. The grain that splits, the nail that warps, the beam that bows like an old man's back, and yet they hold mostly. What above your head, just beyond the dark curve of the tunnel, a post creaks faintly. You glance upward reflexively, but you keep walking, because that's what miners do. They walk forward, into the places where only timber and will keep the stone from falling. There are places in the mine where even the bravest won't whistle, not because of danger, because of something else. Something older than the tunnels, quieter than the dust, louder than thought when the lights go out. They call them knockers or Tommy knockers. Little men who live in the stone. Some say they wear miners' clothes. Others say they are made of coal and shadow. They knock when danger is near. Or they knock for sport. Or they knock when they want you gone. The truth doesn't matter. Only the knocking does. You've heard it? Just once, a rhythmic tap, 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 not far ahead. No one else was near. No picks were swinging, no water dripping. Just 3 knocks, then silence. You didn't go further that day. You turned around, so did the others. No one mentioned it. You just moved to a different shaft. There are rules. Not written, not spoken aloud, only passed down. Don't whistle in the tunnels, don't curse underground. Don't steal from a fallen man's bag. Leave a crust of bread at the end of your shift. For the spirits, for the dead, for the mountain itself. Whatever the reason, it's never questioned. Only done. Some carry charms. A little piece of iron nailed into their pick handle. A scrap of blessed cloth tucked in a boot. A bone, a coin. A smooth stone. Protection, maybe. Or maybe just something to touch when the tunnel breathes too hard. There's a shaft no one uses anymore. Collapsed years ago, but no one seals it. A man died there, no body was recovered, and so by custom it remains open. You don't light a lamp near it. You don't leave tools by the entrance. And you never ever say his name. Not because of fear, because of respect. Because if you were left behind in the dark, you'd want to be remembered. Silently. When sometimes a breeze moves where there shouldn't be one. Sometimes a lantern flickers without cause. Sometimes you feel watched not by malice, but by memory. You tell yourself it's nothing, and you keep moving. But you hum a little as you walk. Not a tune, just noise. To fill the space where silence might grow too thick. And these stories don't live on paper. They live in glances and sudden silences. In the way a man touches the tunnel wall before stepping into the dark. They live because they matter. Not to truth, to survival. And so you do what you were taught, you leave that crust of bread. You nod at the tunnel before entering, and you never ever ignore the knocking. It begins not with shouting, not with bells, but with breath. Yours the others, in and out in the close air of the tunnel, a shared silence that vibrates faintly with anticipation. And then the pick swings. There's no rush, not really. The copper will still be there, embedded deep like fossilized fire, but the foreman sets the pace. And the pace must be kept. So you lift the pick. Shoulders up, elbows steady. Swing. Strike. Pause. Again. The stone doesn't give easily, but it does give. After the fifth strike, you feel it soften. A faint tremor in the shaft wall. A crack in the rhythm. Then comes the chunk, a piece breaking free. Your shovel scrapes it up, metal on stone. Another sound added to the chorus. Lean behind you, someone grunts. Another swings. You don't look. You know the rhythm. 3 men, 6 hands. 1 goal, dig. Clear drag. Repeat. The drag sled rattles as it's pulled down the tunnel. It catches now and then on uneven stone. You hear the scrape, the jerk, the muffled curse. Then it's back again, empty. Ready, you don't stop to rest. Rest comes later. Now is for swinging. Each man has a way of making the work his own. The old one sings low under his breath. Nothing with words, just long, drawn notes like a lullaby. He says it keeps his tempo steady. The young one breathes out sharply every time he swings. Like a smith hammering red-hot iron. He's eager, still believes in strength. You're the quiet one. Your pace is even measured. You found that sweet spot between effort and injury. You do not race, you do not slow. You enduring when sometimes hours pass without a word. Only the song of labor, picks at shovel's breath. The walls seem to close in, then stretch outward. Time folds over on itself. You no longer count minutes. You count swings, you count loads. You count the ache in your hands. Water drips nearby. It always does, steady, in rhythm with the work, as if the mine itself joins in. A fourth member of the crew, always listening. Eventually, your body begins to protest. First in the shoulders, then in the wrists, then deep in the spine. You shift, adjust your stance, change your grip, keep going. You learn the little ways to rest without resting, leaning on your shovel for just a breath longer, letting the young one take the lead. Pausing to wipe your brow, though there is no sweat, only dust. These things buy you minutes, enough to carry on. The light shifts slowly. You can't see it directly, but you feel it in the way your eyes strain, in the depth of shadow. And then a signal, a low call, the end of the shift. You don't cheer, you don't sigh. You simply set the pick down, listen to the sudden stillness and feel the absence of sound like a weight lifted. You roll your shoulders. Wipe your palms, step back. The wall is different now. It bears your mark 3 feet deeper, 3 feet closer to copper, to coin, to survival. You nod at it once out of habit, out of something like respect, and you walk away, already hearing the rhythm waiting for you tomorrow. You wait your turn at the ladder, not because you want to, but because there's no other way. One by one, each man climbs, hands slipping on wood worn smooth with years of passage, boots grinding gently into the rungs. The air grows cooler as you rise and thinner somehow. Or maybe it's your breath, held tight in your chest until the tunnel is far below. When the shaft narrows, you feel the walls pressing just a little closer. You do not speak, no one does. Only the sounds, boots, breath creaking timbers. And then above light. Not full, not bright, but different. Not lantern, not flame. Daylight, even dulled through cloud and smoke, feels like something foreign. You emerge, blinking. The yard is quieter now. The first shift is already gone, the second still below. It's your moment in between. You don't linger. You walk straight to the wash house. I can enter, the air is damp and heavy. Not with steam. There are no luxuries here. But with moisture rising from soaked shirts and dripping boots, you undress without modesty. No one cares. No one looks. The grime peels off in layers. Black under your fingernails, rusty streaks across your chest, dust in the corners of your eyes. You scrub slowly, methodically. Water from the trough. Cold, stinging. But it does the job. And there is little talking here. Not out of silence, but out of weariness. A grunt, a cough. A muttered joke, half heard and quickly forgotten. One man washes with his eyes closed. Another sings quietly in a language you don't speak. You don't ask questions. You only rinse the dirt from your neck and watch it spiral away into the grate. There are benches, worn and uneven. You sit, wrapped in a coarse towel. You let your hands dangle. Your fingers feel swollen. Your knuckles red. A splinter you didn't notice before now throbs gently in your palm. You will leave it in. No use digging it out. Not yet. The foreman passes through. He doesn't speak. He ticks names from a board. You're there, still breathing, still counted. On the far wall, someone has scratched dates into the wood. Rows and rows of them. Some recent, some old. No names, just time. Marked, then forgotten. You stare at them for a while. Your towel cools, your hair drips. You don't know why you keep looking. Maybe because it feels like proof that someone was here, that someone left something, even if it's just a line in pine. When you're dressed again, you lace your boots slowly. You tie the knot 3 times, not because you need to, because it gives you a reason to sit just a little longer. Outside, the light is fading. The wind moves through the trees, stirring dust from the yard. You smell wood smoke and bread and coal. Always coal. You walk toward the low row of houses. Your shadow stretches long behind you. The day is done, but the dust never truly leaves. It follows, quiet, clinging. You carry it home, in your sleeves, in your hair, in your lungs, and tomorrow you'll bring it back again. It leans slightly to the left. You notice it every time you come home. A shift in the doorframe. A lean in the window pane, as if the whole house is tired too, resting just so against time itself. There is no key, no latch worth locking. No one would steal what little you have because everyone has just as little. So you open the door with your foot and close it with your shoulder, and drop your sack on the floor that creaks in one spot near the hearth. The room smells faintly of smoke and damp wool. Not unpleasant, just old. A small fire burning low, a pot still warm. Your dinner, if you could call it that, grains mostly. Sometimes with leaks, sometimes with nothing at all. You sit on the stool. The one that lists slightly, you don't fix it. The house accepts its flaws, and you've learned to do the same. The walls are thin. You can hear your neighbor sneezing. You can hear a child whining. You can hear laughter, soft private laughter from someone's wife or husband across the lane. Your house echoes none of that. Only the tick of the wood settling, and the occasional groan from the roof beam when the wind shifts. You light a candle. You don't need to, but it gives the shadows something to move with. You eat slowly, carefully. Not because you are savoring, but because your teeth ache and your jaw is sore from the tightness of work. Still you chew. You swallow. You count the bites. Out of habit, not hunger. There's a shelf above the hearth. A single mug of folded cloth. A smooth stone from a river you haven't seen in years. You don't remember why you brought it back. But it's there, a piece of somewhere else. Someone else. You take off your boots, finally. You peel off your socks. You flex your toes against the cold floor. There's no luxury here. But there is privacy. There is stillness. There is a quiet that belongs to you. And you settle into it. Your bed is little more than straw, packed unevenly into a sack that's seen better seasons. You lie back. You let your eyes adjust to the way the ceiling blurs in the candlelight. It doesn't matter what the weather is. The house is always just slightly colder than your skin wants it to be. You curl slightly out of instinct. You pull the blanket, rough, heavy, patched up to your chest. And for a moment, everything holds. What you think about the tunnels. You think about the swing of the pick, the drip of water. You wonder if the others are asleep already, if the foreman is counting names again, if the dust has settled or if it still floats, quietly turning in the air. You do not miss the mine, but it has shaped your breath. You dream in the rhythm of it now. There is no fireplace in your dreams. No supper, no candle, only walls and stone and the comfort of repetition. You sleep not to escape it, but to return to the quiet. You don't often walk it without reason, and yet you know it by heart. The narrow lane that runs between your house and the next. Dirt mostly, sometimes stone when someone remembers to lay it. It's rutted where carts pass. It's slick after rain, it's familiar always. Not friendly exactly, but shared. In the mornings it smells of damp bread, of coal smoke, of boiled root vegetables. In the evenings it's mostly quiet. Children used to play here, some still do. But even they learned to be quiet by the age of 10. Laughter doesn't echo much here. It's swallowed by soot-stained walls and thick curtains drawn tight against the cold. There are lives on either side of you. A woman with fingers like twine who knots rope for extra coin. A man who limps but still rises early to sweep the lane. A child who coughs through the night, soft but persistent. You know them but not well. Names are shared once and rarely repeated. You recognize them by their walk, by the slope of their shoulders, by the way their doors sound when they shut. Sometimes you see candles flickering behind shutters, not always. But when you do, it feels like proof. Like someone else made it home today too. You pass them without knocking. They do the same for you. Respect in a place like this is measured not in conversation, but in silence. In not asking, in not intruding. There is no tavern here. Not really. There's a room behind a shop, sometimes warm, sometimes stocked, sometimes not. On rare evenings, men gather. They don't drink to forget. They drink because it fills time. No songs, no toasts, just the quiet clink of clay mugs, the slow exhale of tired lungs. You went once, you never went back. The silence of your house felt more honest. One in the lane, footsteps pass at odd hours. Shifts change, sleep is irregular. You've learned to tell who's walking by the rhythm of their tread. Heavy means foreman. Shuffling means old Tom. The two quick taps and a pause. That's the boy from 3 doors down, always in a rush. No one needs to be seen to be known. Here, sound tells the story. You've walked this lane in snow, in rain, in the stale warmth of early summer. The smells change, the shadows shift, but the feel of it, the way the ground slopes gently toward the ditch, the way the houses lean like weary shoulders, that never changes. Once long ago, someone planted a tree here, a thin, spindly thing. It grows crooked, bent toward the wall like it's ashamed of its own persistence. Still, it grows. Its roots crack the edge of the path. You step around them now without thinking. It reminds you that something lives here, even if nothing blooms. Sometimes late at night, you stand at the end of the lane and look back. It doesn't look like much, just gray shapes and a darker gray, but you know it. It is the line between the world you work in and the world that waits for you afterward. It is not beautiful, but it belongs to you, and so in a way, it is enough. There's not much space in your life for things. Not in your home, not in your hands. Not in the daily rhythm of work, sleep, eat, repeat. But you still carry things, everyone does. You don't think about them often until one goes missing, or breaks, or changes shape from use. And in your satchel, there's always the same handful of objects. A cloth-wrapped bit of food, sometimes still warm by mid-morning. A dull knife, not for defense, but for prying or cutting twine. A chipped spoon that you've had since childhood. No one remembers how it came to be yours, not even you. And a small bundle of twine wrapped and re-wrapped so many times it feels smooth now, almost like leather. There's also a stone, small, flat, river-washed. You keep it in the bottom corner of the bag. No one asks why. No one ever does. It isn't a charm. It doesn't bring luck. But on long days or under heavy ground, you sometimes run your thumb over its surface. It reminds you of a river you haven't seen in many seasons. Not the water itself, but the sound. That's the thing with objects. They hold more than shape, they hold echoes. Line at your belt, a loop of cord. Once meant for tools, now it just hangs. Occasionally it catches on something, pulls taut, reminds you it's still there. It was your father's maybe, or your brother's, or someone else whose hands you've long outlived. You never untie it, there's no need. Sometimes objects are kept not for function, but because letting go feels louder than holding on. At night, when the satchel hangs by the door, you still check the contents. Not because you need them, but because it gives shape to the evening. Bread, knife, spoon, stone, string. Each one a little quieter than the last. They have no names, no history anyone would care to hear. But in their simplicity, they give you something that words rarely do. Continuity. One day, you will leave the satchel behind, maybe forget it altogether. The objects will find other hands or crumble or disappear in dust. But for now they ground you. They are not tools, they are not weapons. They are anchors. And in a world where everything shifts, from the mine floor to the lean of the roof above your bed, that's no small thing. There's a film that settles on everything. Soot from the hearth, dust from the road, grease from cooking, from sweat, from skin. Nothing stays clean for long, but still, you clean. Not because you expect it to last, but because it's what you do. There is no soap the way you know it. There is ash, sometimes lye, sometimes crushed herbs mixed into fat or tallow, and water, always water, but not always hot. Heating it takes time, fuel, patience. You start early, feeding kindling into the stove, waiting for the slow hiss that tells you the basin will be ready. The air grows thick as it heats, the steam curling up the cracked walls, settling into your hair, your sleeves, your breath. You scrub everything by hand, cloth against cloth, bristle against board, knees pressed to the floor, arms moving in circles that never seem to end. Some stains don't come out. You know that. They're not meant to. So you learn to measure cleanliness by a different standard. The smell of smoke replaced with damp linen, the feel of grit replaced with damp softness, the heaviness of sweat replaced with the ache of your hands. You clean things you don't own. You clean for others if you work in service or in laundry. You clean to keep illness at bay, to keep the landlord away, to keep from slipping into the kind of mess that doesn't wash out. And you clean yourself when there's time, when there's water left, when no one else is waiting. You start with your hands, then your face. Sometimes your feet if you can bear the cold, rarely more than that. But still it's something. There's a rhythm to it. One you don't think about anymore. Soak scrub. Rinse it. Wring. Hang weight. The wind becomes your drying rack. The sun your sterilizer. You know which spots catch the most warmth, which nails are strongest for hanging garments, which cloths take longest to dry. No one taught you this. You simply remember because the work repeats itself enough to be memorized by your bones. Sometimes it rains just after everything dries. You say nothing, you just take it all down. Start again, because that's what you do. Because nothing stays clean and no one is waiting to do it for you. Like as night comes, your hands are raw. You wrap them in rags. You sit near the hearth. And still you feel the pull in your shoulders, the slight tremble in your arms from wringing the weight out of heavy linen. You don't complain, you don't rest easily either. But for a moment you allow yourself to sit still and listen to the wind pull at the drying line outside. Soft, persistent like the work itself. You wouldn't call it religion, not exactly. There's a church somewhere nearby. You go. But what lives in your home? What clings to the rafters and soaks into the fibers of your coat, that's older than books. Older than priests, it's not belief. It's memory, inherited, unspoken, passed down in glances and habits. You don't say prayers. Not the long ones, not the ones written down. But there are words you whisper when the wind is sharp. When someone falls ill. When the fire won't catch. You don't think about them. They come on their own, sometimes in your grandmother's voice, sometimes in yours. There's a bit of ribbon tied around the lowest beam in your house. You're not sure why, red, faded now. It's always been there. You wouldn't think to remove it. Maybe it's for protection, maybe for luck, maybe just tradition. But when it frays, you replace it. Not because you believe it will help, but because you'd rather not see what happens if you don't. You carry a bit of salt in your pocket. So do others. Not everyone says so, but you can hear the grains shift in their coats when they move quickly. Salt for health, salt for keeping things out. Salt for walking through graveyards without being followed home. You've never seen it work, but you've never tested it either. There's a mark you make on doors sometimes, with your thumb, with soot or ash. A circle or a cross or something you don't even recognize anymore. It's not religious, not truly. It's more of a habit, something your mother did, something her father taught her. Not explained, just repeated, like tapping twice on wood, or never sweeping after sunset, or turning your cup upside down when someone dies. You don't mock these things. No one does, they aren't spoken of really, just understood, a kind of quiet grammar beneath the language of daily life. It's not about certainty, it's about precaution. Respect maybe, or memory, or fear. You don't need to know what for. When a child is born, someone sews a coin into their swaddling. When someone dies, all the mirrors are covered. No one says why, they just do it. Even those who say they don't believe in anything. Even they knock wood. Even they look twice at crows. At night sometimes you catch yourself whispering. Not words, not even sound. Just an exhale shaped like intention, and you feel slightly better. Slightly more seen, slightly less alone. Even if no one was listening. Even if nothing was ever there. You don't keep a calendar. No one you know does. There's no need to mark the days on parchment or wood. The year reveals itself in quieter ways, more patient ones. A trickle of snowmelt in the corner gutter. The hum of flies returning to the kitchen eaves. The sound of boots crunching dry leaves in a narrow alley. When spring doesn't arrive all at once, it hesitates. First in small green threads pushing through mud, then in the sudden smell of wet bark, then in the way the light changes. So slowly, it surprises you when you notice it again. You open windows you haven't touched in months. Air comes in and with it the outside. You sweep, you air things out. You find a scarf you'd forgotten about tucked behind the stove. The new season makes everything seem slightly unfamiliar again. Like your own house seen after a long journey. When summer is not a celebration. It is work, long hours. Heavy sun, blistered hands, sun-warmed stones, swollen feet. The days stretch long, but not lazily. They demand more of you. The sweat is constant, the flies are bold. The shade under the oak tree by the mill becomes sacred ground. Still, there's laughter. Not joy exactly, but release. The work is shared. The aches are matched. And in the evenings, you can sit and listen to the crickets without needing to say a single word. Autumn tastes like ash and iron. There's a sharpness in the wind. The harvest begins. You bend and lift and dig and wrap and stack. It's not a festival, it's a deadline. You can feel the ground beginning to harden. You can feel the sky pulling farther away each day. But also, you notice the golden quality of late light, the soft collapse of overripe fruit, the hush that settles even in the busiest hours. You begin to sleep a little deeper. Eat a little more, watch the sky more often. And then comes winter. You don't mark its arrival. You feel it in your bones first, in the ache behind your knees, in the way the stairs seem steeper each morning. The world goes gray, white, then brown. The cold doesn't just live outside. It finds the seams in the walls. It curls into your bed before you do, and yet there is something strangely soft about it. Life slows, talks quiet. People visit less often, and when they do, they stay longer. The hearth becomes the center of everything. Tea or broth reheated again and again. The comfort of wool, of layers, of breath visible in the morning air. Minty, and then spring again. It never announces itself, it just arrives. One bud, one bird call, one sudden warm breeze that catches you by surprise. And you start over. You don't name the months. You don't need to. The year isn't a line, it's a wheel. And you've walked it so many times you could trace it with your eyes closed. It's not a hospital. That word doesn't exist for you. It's just the room, or her room, or where they've been put. Tucked at the end of a hallway or behind a curtain, or sometimes when space runs out, just a quiet corner by the stove. You don't expect healing. You hope for it quietly. But expectation is a luxury you no longer afford. There's always someone in the sick room. Sometimes awake, sometimes not. Sometimes groaning. Sometimes whispering things that don't make sense. Sometimes silent, which is worse. The linens are boiled again and again, soaked in lye, laid out to dry on racks in the sun. But the smell remains, something sour and warm. Not quite sweat. Not quite decay, just illness. Lingering. You keep watching shifts, even if no one can pay you for it. Even if you don't know the person in the bed. Even if you're tired. You do it because someone has to. Because once someone did it for your brother. Because you hope dimly someone will do it for you one day. There's not much to be done. Spoon broth between cracked lips, change bandages. Hold a hand when the person is afraid to be alone. Swat away flies that always seem to return no matter the season. You whisper stories if they can still hear, or songs without tunes, or the names of family they once spoke of. It doesn't matter if the words make sense. It just matters that they're there. Some things help. Cloth soaked in vinegar, garlic tied in bunches by the windows, a coin left under the pillow, a prayer etched into the underside of the table. You try it all, not because you know what works, but because not doing anything feels worse. Occasionally, someone gets better. The fever breaks, their breathing deepens. Color returns to the lips. They ask for water, they sit up. Everyone tries not to smile too quickly. The room is cleaned, the sheets changed, the windows opened, and then you forget, deliberately, how close they came. On other times, the silence lasts longer than it should. You step outside when they close the eyes. You listen to the wind. You let the grief settle in, quiet and heavy like evening frost. The room is cleared, the mattress burned, and then it waits again for the next, because someone always comes. The sick room is not a sacred place, but it is in its way a faithful one. Always there, always ready, always watching, always waiting. You don't go to the market to shop. You go because that's where people are. You go to look, to listen, to nod at someone who once gave you half a loaf when yours went stale, to touch the things you can't afford and buy the one or two you can. You go early, not to get the best of anything, but to avoid the press of bodies later on, before the shouting begins, before the children run underfoot, before the arguments over weight and coin. This hour is gentler, everything's still being set out. Everyone's still quiet with sleep in their voices. The stalls lean a little. Some are patched with old sailcloth or flour sacks. Some with nothing at all. A few have proper roofs, most don't. But you know which ones have the bread that doesn't crumble, or the onions that keep longest, or the dried beans that cook evenly and don't float in the pot. These things matter, especially when money doesn't stretch. And the fishmonger isn't shouting yet. She's just humming to herself as she lays out her catch, one eye on you, just in case you ask too many questions and don't buy anything. There's always someone like that. Someone who asks to smell the fish, to press the flesh, to lift the gills, and then walks away. You don't want to be that person. So you nod politely, pick one at random, and pay. Yeah, the woman selling herbs has hands stained green. Not from the herbs, from the dyeing she does in the evenings. She'll talk to you about it if you ask, or if you don't. But this morning she's still half asleep. She just smiles. Pushes a small bundle of dried mint toward you. You weren't planning to buy it, but now you do. Because you don't want to leave her disappointed, you'll use it for tea. Or hang it in the kitchen window, or forget about it until it crumbles in your pocket. And the baker's son is sweeping. Not very well, he's tired. You nod, he nods back. He used to cry when he had to sell bread alone. Now he just stares through people like someone twice his age. You take a heel of yesterday's loaf. Stale, but still good for stew. You hand over the coin. He doesn't count it, he knows you're honest. Or he just doesn't care today. While you stop by the potter's cart, though you don't need anything. His hands are already gray with clay. He's muttering to himself about rain. You don't speak. You just run your fingers along the rim of a cup with a small crack in it. He sees, he wraps it anyway. Doesn't charge you. You leave the coin anyway, tucked under the bowl of string. You'll use the cup, you'll remember the crack. But it will still hold water. And that's enough, when the sky lightens. The hum grows louder. Voices rise, prices too. The market begins to stir in earnest. You pull your coat a little tighter, clutch the basket a little closer, and slip back down the alley before the real crowd arrives. You've bought little, but it's enough. And in a few days you'll come again. Just to see what hasn't changed. You don't think of them much, but they are always there. They wake when you do, sleep when you sleep. Sometimes not even then. They walk the city with you, though they do not pay tax, do not kneel, do not beg or pray. They simply are, and the city would feel wrong without them. When the cats rule the rooftops, slipping between gaps in tiles, stretching out in sunlit windowsills, twisting through alleys too narrow for human feet. You see them sometimes, at dawn, blinking slowly, tail flicking once before they vanish again. They live in the rafters of workshops, behind the ovens of bakers, under carts left out too long in the rain. No one owns them, but everyone feeds them, sometimes for luck, sometimes for the mice, sometimes because the world feels slightly less cruel when a cat curls in your lap without being asked. The donkeys are tired, always tired, their eyes half-lidded, their backs bearing baskets of stone or bread or clay. You pass one each morning near the tanner's yard. He doesn't move much, just flicks his ear against the flies and shifts his weight from one hoof to the other. Children touch his nose and giggle. He does not flinch, he has heard louder things. He will outlive many of the men who yell at him. The dogs are sharper, not feral, just free. Some belong to someone, but not completely. They chase carts, fight in the alleys, lick grease from butcher's stones. But they're clever. They learn who throws scraps and who throws stones. They know when the baker discards the burnt loaves. They follow soldiers, not because they're loyal, but because soldiers leave bones behind. At night you sometimes hear them howl, not angry, just remembering something. The birds are a chorus of indifference. Pigeons on the church roof, sparrows darting beneath your feet, crows watching from chimney tops, heads tilted slightly. They watch everything, a fight in the square, a kiss by the well, a purse quietly lifted from a belt. And then they fly away, unburdened, uninvolved. But you suspect they remember. Oh, the rats you don't talk about. You see them, you pretend you don't. You hear them in the walls at night. You step carefully when you descend to the cellar. They're not evil, just surviving. Like you place your bread higher. You tuck your clothes in tight bundles. And you never leave food out even for a moment. You've learned. They're part of the city now. Just like the chimneys, just like the bells, just like the wind that never quite stops. These animals don't speak, but they bear witness to every argument, every birth, every whisper. You'll forget them when you're busy, but they'll be there all the same. Waiting, watching, and when you're gone, they will still walk these streets, as they always have, silent, observant, unnoticed, enduring. He doesn't have a sign anymore. The paint peeled away long ago, and besides, those who need him know where to go. You open the door and step inside. It creaks, it always creaks. And though he doesn't look up right away, you know he's heard you. He always does. The workshop is cluttered, but not messy. Everything has a place, even if that place is a box filled with other boxes, or a drawer that sticks, or a shelf that looks like it might collapse under its own memory. On the walls, patterns traced in charcoal, measuring sticks worn at the edges, a calendar from 3 winters ago. Dust settles on everything, but only the kind that time puts there, not neglect. He doesn't move quickly anymore. He shuffles, pauses mid-task, lets his joints catch up to his will. But his hands still remember. They move with an ease that doesn't match the rest of him. They find the right chisel without looking. They measure by instinct now. The number's only a polite formality. His fingertips are calloused smooth like stone that's been touched by 1,000 rains. You look around while he works. A half-finished chair, a drawer that won't shut. A cradle perhaps for a child already born, or for one who never will be. There are pieces of the city here, not just in wood and iron, but in the memories of things repaired. That cabinet in the mayor's hall, he mended its hinges. That gate near the fountain, he reset its posts after a flood. He remembers these things, though he doesn't often speak of them. He remembers them through scars in the wood, through tools he shaped to fix the flaw only he could see. And when he does speak, it's softly, measured like everything else about him. He tells you that the new apprentices have soft hands, that wood isn't the same these days, that people want fast more than they want good. But he isn't bitter, he simply notices, and keeps working. There's a small stool beside the hearth. You sit there, sometimes for an hour. Sometimes longer, he doesn't mind. There's comfort in the rhythm of sanding, in the creak of the bench and the faint clink of tools returned to their hooks. Even the clock on the wall ticks slowly here. Time moves differently, more patiently, as if it too remembers when things were made to last. When you leave, he offers you a wrapped parcel. You didn't ask for anything, but he's made something anyway. A spoon, a box, a comb carved with an unfamiliar flower. He doesn't charge you. He shrugs, says he had the scraps. You thank him, though the words feel too small, because what he's given you is not just wood. It's care and time, and proof that even now some things are still made by hand. The sun has long since vanished behind the roofs. A last curl of smoke rises from the baker's chimney. The shutters are drawn one by one until only slits of candlelight glow behind them, and then the city exhales. That's when the watchers begin their work. They're not soldiers, not really. Though some carry weapons and some wear bits of faded uniform, they're not here to fight. They're here to see, to listen, to linger at corners, to nod at shadows. Some call them peacekeepers, others just call them by name. They walk in pairs mostly, old boots scuffing the cobbles, lanterns swaying from hooks or hands. You hear the jangle of keys, the gentle tap of wood on stone as one leans on a staff to rest. Their routes are always the same, past the tannery where the smell still hangs heavy, up through the winding streets of the Weaver's Quarter, where cats slink after mice in the moonlight, along the river walk, slick with mist, where the occasional drunk slouches home late, mumbling half-forgotten songs. They stop sometimes, not because there's trouble, but because the night itself demands attention. They stand in silence, just looking at the city sleeping. They've known it through fires and floods, through riots and processions, and through countless ordinary nights like this one. One watcher ties a strip of cloth around a creaking door latch, a quiet sign for the carpenter to stop by in the morning. Another bends down to collect a broken jug, placing it neatly beside the wall to keep the street clear. They don't always talk to each other. Sometimes they walk whole hours in companionable silence, sharing a flask of weak wine or a crust of bread, but they see everything. They see the candle that hasn't gone out yet in the apothecary's room. They see the boy sneaking out with his shoes in his hands. They see the coins passed quietly behind the tavern, and the girl crying on the church steps not ready to go home. They don't always intervene, but they remember, and their memories become part of the city's memory, passed quietly from one watcher to the next when the time comes to hang up the lantern. There are dangers, of course. A brawl that went too far, a thief too desperate to run, the occasional scream in the dark, cut off before it can echo. But most nights pass without trouble, just the quiet sound of breathing stone, and the watchers who pace beneath it. You've seen them before from your window on the nights when you can't sleep. Just a shape in the fog, a soft footfall, a moving glow. You didn't know his name, but he nodded to you once, and that was enough. Tonight the watchers walk again, while babies cry, while old men dream, while lovers whisper and drunks snore. They pass beneath archways, they check latches. They make sure the lanterns stay lit or go out as they should. They ask for no thanks, they give no sermons. Just a quiet presence in the long, dark hours before the city wakes. You wouldn't find it unless you knew where to look. Not through the front door, where the statues sit stern in their alcoves. Not through the sanctuary, where the candles have long since burned low, but behind a narrow passage, beneath a sloped stair, past a shelf of broken hymnals and empty jars. There you'll find it the temple kitchen, still warm, still breathing. There is always a pot on the hearth, not always full, but never cold. Sometimes it's broth, Thin, salt-heavy, full of roots and scraps. Sometimes it's a porridge that thickens as the hours drag on. Sometimes it's tea, dark and bitter, boiled so long it tastes of stone. But it is always something, because someone might come. And if they do, there must be warmth to offer them. You wouldn't think a sacred place would smell of onions and wood smoke. But it does, not incense. Not flowers, just the honest scent of what people need. Salted fish, flatbread stacked in cloth, a wheel of cheese that's been whittled down slowly over weeks. There's no feast, just enough. Always enough. And the cook, if you could call her that, is older than the stairs. No vows, no robes. Just a heavy apron and a shawl that smells faintly of thyme. She doesn't speak much, only to the fire, and perhaps to the rats, who she lets steal a crumb now and then so long as they behave themselves. Her hands are red from heat, her back is bent. But she moves with the steady rhythm of someone who has spent a lifetime listening to pots. She has seen them all. The penitent shaking in the cold, the widow with dust on her hems, the orphan whose name she never learned, but who always said thank you. She does not ask questions, she does not preach. She simply ladles what is there, sets out a spoon and sits beside the door just far enough to give space, but close enough that no one feels alone. And the novices sometimes sneak down for bread. They think she doesn't know. She does. She leaves the best crusts where they'll find them. Even the high priest comes now and then, when the robes feel too heavy and the prayers too quiet. He never says why. She never asks. He always leaves calmer than he came. At dawn, she will bank the fire, cover the pot, sweep the ashes into neat little hills. But she will not leave. She'll nap in the corner chair, a cat curled in her lap, the scent of leeks clinging to her sleeves. Because someone might come tomorrow, or the day after, and they'll be hungry, or lost or afraid. And she will be here with broth, and bread and thyme. It isn't grand, not like the nobleman's fountain near the square. Not marble, not gilded, no lions' mouths or winged figures here. Just a stone basin, uneven, dark with moss. A pipe that leaks and water that never stops. It was built a long time ago. No one quite remembers when. The record is lost or buried in a crumbling ledger beneath a city clerk's desk. But it's always been there. At least that's what people say. They've brought buckets to it in drought, washed wounds in it during plague, let their horses drink from it during war. And still the water flows. Count the stone is worn smooth where hands have rested. Children once climbed it years ago. Lovers carved initials near its base. You can run your fingers across the surface and feel time, pressed into it like a thumbprint in soft clay. A woman once washed her baby's clothes here. A man once dropped a coin in for luck and never came back. None of them are here now, but the fountain is. At night, when no one watches, it almost seems to breathe. The rhythm of the water is gentle. Plip, plip, plip. Like a heartbeat, like memory, like sleep. And sometimes someone passes by. A courier late from the stables, a washerwoman with sore feet, a priest unsure of his own sermon. They stop, they dip a hand, they rinse their face, they drink. Not because it's the best water, but because it's always there. The city changes, walls fall, houses are rebuilt, shops close and reopen under new names, but the fountain stays. It has watched this city forget itself again and again, and it has not complained once. It simply flows. If you stand near it long enough, you might hear things. Not voices exactly, not ghosts. Just echoes of things once said. A child's laugh, a promise whispered under moonlight. A name called softly, never answered. The water knows. Wait, now and then someone brings flowers, no one knows who. They float for a while, then drift to the side where moss will take them. The stone accepts them without comment, it accepts everything. And now, as the stars fade and the light begins its slow return, you leave the fountain behind. It doesn't ask you to stay, but you'll remember it. Not because it was loud or grand or sacred, but because it never stopped being there. Steady, kind, unchanging. Thank you for walking these quiet streets with me tonight. The city is full of stories, even the small ones, even the slow ones, especially the slow ones. Now close your eyes. Let the cobblestones fade beneath your feet and rest. You've wandered far enough for one night. Good night.